when do we see Dr. McCoy's tricorder become real?
Well, that's a dream I think many of us share who watch science fiction, that let's use that medical tricoder. So patient just comes in, we do a scan, and then the basic vital signs and health parameters, even some diagnostic options for Dr. McCoy could be on that device.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Future of X, a new mini podcast series under our SeedToScale initiative. The world around us is changing at a dizzying pace in ways that will have profound effects on the way we live, work, or even play. And we at Accel are always on the lookout for extraordinary ideas which can reshape the world as we know. Having backed some of these ideas, our search for more of these continues, and our new Future of X series is our way of discovering the next big thing through in-depth interviews with founders, leaders, and experts on the bleeding edge, hoping that some of these conversations might be relevant to those of you who are thinking of starting up now or already in your startup journey. To listen to more insights from us or to check out the show notes, visit us at seedtoscale.com/insights after listening to this podcast. In today's podcast, we explore the future of digital health. And as an expert, we have Dr. Bertalan Meskó, commonly referred to as the medical futurist among the healthcare community. Dr. Bertalan serves as the director of the Medical Futurist Institute, a company that helps to understand digital technology and bring healthcare into the 21st century. Dr. Bertalan is a physician with a PhD in genomics and is also an Amazon top 100 author. We also have Radhika Ananth, Vice President at Accel, and my colleague, who focuses on digital health and biotech investments for us. In this episode, we listened to Dr. Bertalan and Radhika discuss broad trends that they see in their digital health around the world with a focus on India, potential ideas that could very much go mainstream in the near future, and COVID-19 related tailwinds in the space, and also briefly touch upon the patient side of things in the futuristic landscape. I really enjoyed this chat, and I hope you do too.
This is exciting. We have Dr. Bertalan joining us from Budapest, as well as my colleague Radhika here from Bangalore. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Bertalan.
Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome, Radhika, as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Eri.
Awesome. So we'll start out with a question that I've been wanting to ask. So, Dr. Bertalan, you're a medical futurist. And before we get into that portion of it, like you run Medical Futurist, the popular website, I wanted to just get a sense for how did you go from practicing medicine to predicting the future of medicine? Like, how did that journey start?
Absolutely. And I will try to keep it short because my childhood dream when I was 6 years old was to become a researcher, devoting my life to science and research in life sciences. So I knew that I would go to medical school only for the reason to start my PhD after graduating from medical school. So I always wanted to become a researcher, but when I finished my PhD and it was in clinical genomics, I felt that something was missing from my life, and that thing was my geek self. I'm quite a geek. I love living and working with technologies, and being a researcher in genomics means that this thing will still be missing from your life. So I looked for something else where I could do two things at once: zoom in into one technology and see its potential role in the future of healthcare, and maybe on the same day, zoom out to see the big picture about how healthcare is moving in general globally. And there was no profession like that or no field of research or science where I could do that. So I started creating my own medical futurism and futuristic studies in medicine. And that's how I became the medical futurist. That's how I launched the medical futurist now more than a decade ago. And I have a dedicated team of 15 people helping me in reaching our mission, which is making patients the point of care through these advanced technologies.
That's super helpful. Maybe the follow-up is I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I'm assuming I saw your writing on this. When do we see Dr. McCoy's tricorder become real?
Well, that's a dream I think many of us share who watch science fiction, that let's use that medical tricoder. So patient just comes in, we do a scan, and then the basic vital signs and health parameters, even some diagnostic options for Dr. McCoy could be on that device. We have some devices that can measure these basic vital signs with a scan, body temperature, ECG, heart rate, few basic things like that. But the real medical tricorder is still something that we haven't seen in action, and I don't expect to see such devices making diagnostic options instead of us even for a decade from now, because that's not the real dream or vision that we share at the medical future, is that technologies can do this job for us. It would be like in a way that technologies should support what physicians and patients have been doing.
Got it. Maybe that's a good segue to the first question I had for you, and then after that I'll get in Radhika's view as well. So if you look at digital health, and how are you seeing that play out? What's the future of digital health solutions? Maybe what is more real than if the tricorder is some ways off?
It's such a great question, because many people think that digital health is all about a myriad of technologies. It's all about a vision that AI and advanced health sensors and genomics will always be, all of these will flow into healthcare and make it so much technology based. While I think in reality, what we will see soon is how digital health is a cultural transformation of healthcare. By this cultural transformation, I mean that the way the hierarchical doctor-patient relationship has been transforming into an equal-level partnership, the way how the passive patient has been transforming into a proactive e-patient, or how the burned-out physician role has been transforming into a sort of role of a guide in this jungle of health information for patients, enjoying the job that these medical professionals do. So all these transitions are simply much more important than which technology, microchip or smartphone can come out next year. So while these changes were initiated by advanced technologies, the change, the cultural shift is not driven by them. So that's why I think if we can have a realistic vision about digital health, it's that I am the point of care. As a patient, I would get diagnosis, treatments, or monitoring wherever I am. So I don't have to go to a point of care, but the point of care comes to me. I think that's the simplest way I can summarize the vision we share about digital health.
That's a great way of putting it. So when do you see most of the tracking things, ECG, blood glucose, genetic testing, other things become ubiquitous, and maybe even on the phones, the smartphones we carry? Is that a reality that could happen?
Absolutely. The point I'm trying to make is that if I give you 20 state-of-the-art digital health technologies for you to use, I'm sure that your care, your health or disease management won't change significantly in the next couple of months or even years, because you have to work with a partner physician. If you don't have a partner physician in this, then you will be left alone with a huge amount of data to analyze. Even if you have a partner physician, if you cannot bring, like I can bring my data from my smartwatch and fitness sensor to my primary care physician, but we simply cannot upload this information into my medical records because there is no way for that. So even if we give you all these technologies, your healthcare will not change significantly. And that's why it's so important to say out loud that the cultural transformation has to happen first. And then we can start bringing in advanced technologies.
Got it. That's a really good point. Radhika, I'd love to get you into this. Any aspects of digital health that excite you as an investor? Yeah.
Right. So conventionally, we've not seen many companies move the needle on cost, quality, and access to care simultaneously. But now we're seeing companies do that, leverage technologies, and be able to address all three dimensions and provide a shift in paradigm. So with that, futuristically, we believe that we will see aggregated, anonymized, and secure pool of interoperable data that we can access for designing personalized medicine and care plans for the patients. In the near term, what interests us is AI applications in the various subsectors of healthcare, digitally enabled chronic care management, and telehealth plays, end-to-end full stack telehealth plays. And I'm happy to double click on these if you'd like.
Yeah, so it'll be helpful if you can double click and talk a little bit about that as well.
So we've been working on the AI thesis, AI applications, and we've classified three subsectors that continue to be of interest to us. One is AI applications in diagnostics, chronic care, and the third being in drug development. So I think in all three, probably in diagnostics, we see that more. The first wave of AI applications is through that, and we're now leveraging the second and third wave. So in that context, AI applied on some not yet solvable radiology imaging like ultrasound or in histopathology in vitro diagnostics is particularly interesting for us across indications. And in chronic care, so digital therapeutics, again, it uses AI as nudges, right? Nudges and reminders for managing proactive and ongoing management and also remote care management between the patient and the provider. So enabling better and holistic care. So in that context, all of chronic care, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and other comorbidities associated with that continue to be of interest. And we just made a recent investment which looks at the US market, which helps in obesity management in associated chronic care management. So that's interesting. And then lastly, verticalized telehealth, right? Any telemedicine where we can completely build full stack. We start off with telemedicine and then we are able to provide other aspects of care along the way and help the patient through the entire journey. So that would be of interest. And other paradigms in healthcare delivery would be asset-light, offline-based models, which provide easier accessibility and cost effectiveness. So these are the three different things in digital health that we are focusing on.
Got it. That's helpful. Now, coming back to you, Dr. Bertalan, what is the North Star indicator for digital health companies? Any specific things that you think? And if so, why?
I think the line that these technologies must make patients the point of care should help any company or organization make sure that they are on the right track. Because if they develop something that's not supporting this long-term goal, then I'm afraid they are going against digital health. And also maybe patient design is another thing that can help these companies make sure that whatever product comes as an end product when they finish their job, that's going to be in line with what patients need in real life. Patient design is different. I'm not sure if you have heard patient design in this way, but it's different from patient centricity, because patient design means that you involve patients on the absolute highest level of decision making of that company or organization. So if you're talking about a pharma company, it's about having a patient advisory board for the CEO themselves on the top level. And those organizations and regulators like the Food and Drug Administration that have been creating such patient design advisory boards, I'm sure that they can be the ones to bring products, services, technologies to the market that people will want to use because those meet a real life patient or clinical need.
Got it. And so when you say patient advisory board, who are these people? Who do you bring on as a patient advisory?
You will be surprised how much some patients can contribute to the table. I mean, there are patients with even economic background or background in science. There are patient scholars who now publish medical studies and essays in very prestigious medical journals. So those patients can bring a lot of value to the table. I have seen an example myself in practice when I went to the Netherlands, because there was a Dutch hospital trying to design a new facility for the hospital. And what they did was they invited their chronic patients to have their voices heard before even designers started working on the design for the new facility. And those patients had their voices heard. They asked for round tables instead of the traditional word desks where monitors face the physician but not the patient. So they asked for round tables so they can look at the data and the monitors at the same time, being equal partners with the medical professionals. They ask for things like that. It might be a strange concept that patients can contribute to designing hospitals or treatment process or even technologies used by them, but it's very much the case that actually thousands of patients have been presenting keynotes in medical events, have been writing essays and papers in medical journals, have been very vocal about their needs on social media and through websites and blogs. And there are so many companies and organizations out there, from the World Health Organization to regulators, that should make all their decisions with the contribution they can get from this amazing patient group.
I was going to say there's a term for it, no, Dr. Bertalan. It's called patient opinion leaders. It's become a thing apparently now.
It's like key opinion leader.
Because they have that impact on so many organizations and companies' future goals.
That's great. So now from the patient view to maybe moving to the hospital side, how can hospitals be reimagined in the new digital health paradigm? Do you see hospitals move completely online, or what's your view on how that's going to evolve?
It's a huge issue because we've seen many hospitals trying to go paperless and do everything digitally, which is, I think, in 2020, it's something that should be the normal, but it hasn't been so. So it's an understandable process. But as I mentioned, that these technologies can make patients the point of care. We don't see that the future of healthcare is about shiny, even bigger, even more modern hospitals, but about hospitals like we have today that would be able to provide care even at the patient's home or wherever they are. And we should only go to a point of care when we either have to meet a medical professional in person, we have to use devices, technologies that we cannot access at home. So we won't have MRI and CT scans at home, obviously. But only for these purposes, we should go to the point of care. And I understand those visions when I see really huge hospitals with LED screens and shiny walls and everything is so technological. But we are trying to bring healthcare to wherever the patient is instead of, the opposite way. But still, going paperless would be an obvious step forward. Using 5G to connect the devices that they have would be an obvious step forward. But right now, regarding infrastructure, we are seeing such big gaps between certain hospitals, even within the same regional physical system, that it will take some time until they can get through these challenges.
Got it. Radhika, any India perspective here? How do you see that evolving?
So India perspective is largely driven by the new NDHM, right? I think very interesting trends are come about where unbundling of hospitals are happening and point of care is being delivered at home. We get to see them play out, AD, but we've just about started. One of the things with the COVID adoption has been that 80 to 85% of clinicians have been using teleconsultation and digital platforms in India, and out of which about 50-60% are content, are happy with that. That's a big shift from the pre-COVID days. So those are the trends we're seeing play out, but a full adoption is yet to play out, and we're yet to see that happen.
Got it. So maybe what are Dr. Bertalan, roadblocks preventing digital health to see faster, explosive? So from a technology point of view, a lot of things are moving, but it could be technology, it could be other people-related things. What are the major roadblocks you see?
Wow, how much time do we have? I'm trying to come up with only the really major things here. One is rejection from medical professionals, not because they don't understand what's going on, but because most of us medical professionals have not received an education about this. Digital health as a part of the curriculum has only been part of the medical curriculum in about 5 or 10 universities worldwide. I also teach medical students about digital health, but there is only a handful of examples of other curriculum. So it's not their fault. It's how we have been educated to get ready for practicing medicine. An obvious second thing is the lack of regulations. I'm sure you saw when Mark Zuckerberg, head of Facebook, had a Senate hearing in the US last year, and US senators didn't understand how Facebook worked. So imagine that those policymakers have to come up with regulations about AI use for medical purposes or health sensors, genomics, and telemedicine. So the lack of good regulations is a major issue. We see an issue in the ethical standards that are still missing, because these technologies have become accessible so fast that we haven't really got accustomed to those, and we don't yet know how to deal with them. So I'm talking about the gaps that are being created now between people who can access to care or don't have access to that, people who can buy a 3D bioprinted human tissue instead of waiting for an organ transplantation, and people who cannot. So because of the access to technologies, there is a financial, biological gap that's getting bigger and bigger between people, and that's ethically, of course, not acceptable. We see that there are many patients who want to use these technologies, and they go online and do searches and find information, and then they expect their physicians to act accordingly based on what they found, even though it's not a service where you just ask things to be done. It's a partnership that you can create with your physician, and by bringing information to a doctor-patient relationship, it should be still a partnership, a real-life discussion, and not a way that you demand service. There is an infrastructure issue that how can we expect a primary care physician working in rural Hungary or rural India to work with AI when they have the infrastructure that they have? And I stop now, but I could just one more thing about the hype component here. That if policymakers or investors or developers, the innovators of companies don't understand the capability of AI good enough. Then they start overhype it. And then immediately every company is using AI, even though they just have an Excel spreadsheet with a macro in it. And that's dangerous because it creates false expectations for patients, false hope. It creates false assumptions for physicians. And even though we will start using it because of the hype, we won't be able to prove the medical background, the real life value of that. So I stop at these 6 major reasons, but really the list keeps on getting longer.
So, like talking about startups, are there startups that you'd want to see, Dr. Bertalan, that opportunities?
You mean startups that they exist already and I would love them to see flourish, or
it could be either that or it could
that, sure.
Or maybe even ideas out there for the entrepreneurs who are listening. White spaces, either way.
Absolutely. There are topics and startups where I really wanted them to be successful, but like Theranos, making it possible to have a blood test from a droplet of blood, but that turned out to be a scam. But we really wanted them to flourish and succeed because that would change the lab test industry forever. But what I would love to see as a startup working on, and I haven't seen good ones already or yet, I have so much data. As an empowered patient, I measure my sleep. I have a fitness watch. I check my performance during exercises. I had genomic tests. I had my whole genome sequenced, and I had my microbiome sequenced, so I know what food choices I should make during the day. I have such an amount of data that I cannot deal with it myself. And even with the help of, and I have a partner physician in this, it's still not enough. So I would love to see a startup working on an AI-based system that would try to get meaningful conclusions for me and to my physician out of this bunch of data. I've seen some like first tries, but those haven't been successful. And I know that it's such a hard issue to tackle, but I would love to see startups working on that.
That's a good idea. Anything to add, Radhika, from your side?
On what we'd like to see in startups.
Yeah. Interesting startup ideas. Yeah.
I think the ones we wish to see are the ones we are investing in currently.
That's a good answer.
I'd like to see truly differentiated tech innovations coming out of India. We understand that we don't yet have a burgeoning and a supportive infrastructure and ecosystem to provide that. So it'll be good to see founders who can seed their ideas from here and build out global world-class products that has India plus overseas as a market. On that sense, futuristically, to add to what Dr. Bertalan said, with the genetic data that's being available, I'm sure that we can personalize everything for us, something that can continuously measure the states of our health with all the longitudinal data that's being collected, and having digital coaches who can, and first responders who can provide personalized daily workout routines or diets and so on. So that's the larger futuristic goal. Realistically, would like to see providing point of care at home would be interesting, and all of tech innovations enabling that would be great. And insurance companies supporting, just like in the US, where it's a largely payer-driven market, and here it's out-of-pocket market. And because of that, innovation is somehow curbed. We would like to see that not just higher insurance penetration, but more personalized insurance products that could come from insurance companies, as well as the telemedicine companies, right? Like, it would be good if they could tap into the adjacencies. Like, if the digital therapeutic company, they can be like a plus. Again, these are models that are in the US. If we could come up with those models, we're beginning to see them. We're beginning to see people doing that, and would love to see those kind of startups.
Yeah, that's it. So, but one is all the advice, the other is to follow them, right? So, like, you need a robot to chase me around to make me do the exercise. Like, that's the so
there was I'm sorry for that. There was a great application trying to do that. It was Zombies Run. And they tried to do augmented reality through your smartphone, even through the Google Glass. So while you were running away from zombies, and you could even hear them. If I tried once, it was terrifying experience.
Oh, really?
But
wow. Okay.
It's in action. It's being used.
That's wow. Whatever we can think of, there is someone trying it. That's exciting. So
it reminds me of the.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
And you run away. You run fast.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Even if a dog's chasing in India, like, I run fast. So yeah. Yeah. So, but I think we are in the present time where like COVID has really changed a lot of things for all of us. Maybe if you can talk a little bit about managing a pandemic, like in the future, how, what are the things that, like as a futurist, you wish we can do, right? Any thoughts on that? And also maybe a follow up is that, is this a tailwind for to be more, like I know it's tough to call this a tailwind, but to be better prepared for future pandemic, the amount of impact it's had.
I think if there's one thing that this pandemic has taught us or should teach us, it's that without the use of advanced technologies, anything like that can happen again and again and again. In fact, the first report that came out about the potential outbreak in China came from a Canadian startup using AI that went through airline ticketing data, public health data, and public health reports. It was called Blue Dot, and they were about a week faster than the World Health Organization in describing that the outbreak is going on. I think it shows clearly that we have to rely on such AI-based systems. I'm not saying that we should only use these systems and nothing else. I'm saying that we should use these AI-based systems to support public health officials so they can make better decisions. But without these systems, they are on their own. And obviously, no human being is able to scan through so much amount of data when we look at public health, airline ticketing, and the list goes on. So that's one thing that I think we should learn from this pandemic. And we have to rely on future AI-based systems to even prevent outbreaks from happening, not only catching them as early as possible. The second is that the pandemic has taught us that telemedicine should have been the norm already, but now is the new norm. So even for a decade before the pandemic, we had been talking about the importance of including telemedicine in normal care. That in so many situations, you don't need to leave time from work or family, travel to a point of care, and discuss your blood test results in 3 minutes with your physician and then travel back. It's a waste of time and effort for everyone. So telemedicine should have been part of healthcare as we know it already. But now it has become the new norm because in many places, either they use telemedical technologies or they cannot provide care at all. And that's quite a good motivation for systems. I'm not being sarcastic. That's the case that we are seeing worldwide. That's the second thing I think we have learned about that. And the third thing is about the importance of sensors and lab tests we can use at home. And that's also quite related to what I said about how digital health is making patients the point of care. We used to have so much rejection from medical professionals and policymakers about this. They didn't want to bring these technologies to the homes of patients. But now, because of the exposure to the infection, that's the trend that we are seeing, that more and more technologies become accessible at the patient's home. And of course, it's related to telemedicine, because that's how they receive care. That's how they send in data that they measure about themselves, or the lab tests they have at home. It's related to AI, because in many cases, AI-based systems have analyzed these data sets. So all these technologies are interrelated. But these are the three major things I think we have learned along the way, that without AI, such things will happen, that telemedicine is the new norm, and that at-home lab tests and sensors must be a part of care.
Got it. So we talked about digital health and also COVID. Maybe switching gears, you touched upon this a little bit. I'd love to take a patient-centric view. What does the patient of the future look like? Right? How would care be delivered to them?
All right, you poked the monster here. Okay.
Yeah.
I have no health condition as far as I know it, but I try to live like someone, like a patient from the future. And millions of patients have been living just like me. It starts with obviously using online, digital, social media channels for peer support, for second opinion, for finding information about the questions or health issues we have. That's, the step number 0. Mm-hmm. But then I measure data. I measure my sleep quality to make sure I find out which lifestyle choices can lead to a better quality sleep. I have a smart sleep alarm, so I wake up in the morning from light sleep, feeling energized for the whole day. I have a fitness smartwatch, so I know my fitness activity in general. And also I measure everything during my exercise sessions and running sessions, so I can improve my performance. I had my whole genome sequence, so I know exactly my whole code in my DNA. I learned what kind of medical conditions I have a risk for. So I was able to create a preventive plan with my primary care physician. I learned what medications I would have a side effect for, so we avoid those at all costs. I learned how some of my lifestyle choices impact my general well-being, my mental, emotional, and physical health. I had my microbiome sequenced, So I learned what kind of diet I should have based on the bacteria living in my digestive system. And I think these are very minor things any patient can do. The real patient from the future will experience healthcare across borders. It might sound like a big thing, but if you think about it, now people and goods and services can go across boards globally, but not data. Your healthcare data must be in your healthcare system, in your country's medical records, while data is the simplest thing that could cross borders globally, not people, goods, or services. So I expect patients from the future to experience a care they receive from a globalized healthcare, where having a cancerous tissue, I can send a tissue to a startup in Belgium where they are specialized in sequencing the DNA of that tumor sample. And they would use a database in the cloud in the US to find out whether there are any matching clinical trials based on the mutations in my cancerous tissue. And then maybe there is in the database, there is a clinical trial going on a Spanish island run by a French pharma company. And they look for patients specifically like me having that specific genetic mutation in their cancerous tissue, which means I would get precision medicine based customized treatment for my cancer, without even meeting anyone in my healthcare system. I think that's the globalized healthcare that patients from the future will enjoy using.
Yeah. That brings a question for me. You talked about data there. So there is a lot of talk about privacy and when it comes to medical health data. Any thoughts on that topic?
Of course, this is a bargain we have to keep in mind, that without your data, there is no AI revolution, there is no digital health development. And your data must come from your medical records, from your health sensors, from your genetic test, from your fitness watch, from your online choices and lifestyle habits, anything that we can measure. Without that data, it's physically impossible to develop digital health or AI-based systems. So it means that this revolution will go through with a level of breach of our privacy. But I think as long as I'm the one deciding how much of my privacy I'm willing to give up in exchange for a chance for a longer and healthier life, ethically, I should be all right. The problem is that in many countries, it's simply not true because patients are forced to give out some of their privacy. In other countries, there is no way, even if I wanted to provide some form of data for my privacy so I can benefit from using the advanced technologies. So I'm afraid that for now, this is an ethical gap that we cannot fill in until enough policymakers, enough patients, and enough medical professionals understand what we have at stake and how we can prevent these ethical nightmares from happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then we talked about unbundling hospitals and we touched upon that. But if you look into the future, can diagnostics, primary care, you talked about a little bit, can it completely move remote, right? And from a patient perspective, why or why not?
It's a good question. I think it won't and it shouldn't. So as a patient, I don't want my relationship with my primary care physician to be remote only. We have a relationship based on trust. We know each other. This is something that only human beings can build in real time, in person. But for so many other health issues, we just simply don't have to meet. I don't have to take her time so much, and I don't have to travel and wait. But these things could be handled digitally so fast compared to in-person meetings. So even as a physician, I believe that the core values of medicine is at the heart of the doctor-patient relationship. That I want to have a real-life conversation with eye-to-eye contact with my physician and only use every other technology, digital communication for the rest, for issues that we can just discuss quickly enough. But like even me not having a medical condition for now, we meet twice or 3 times a year for a few minutes to just check me out. Let's talk about that. But I sent her all my data before. So even she can prepare if she wants to. So I think it won't become remote only, and it shouldn't. And the more all the stakeholders understand what's going on, why it's a cultural transformation, maybe the better chance we have to make it in the right way.
Got it. That's a good point. Radhika, your perspective on how this might play out in India, especially with a fragmented health and data system, with very little interoperability and all that designed in, right? So it's pretty early days.
Right. So what is the best way to collect patient data and where can we collect them, right? So it seems, at least as of now, provider network seems like the best place to start capturing that data because it's the quintessential touch point for patients. And then, of course, tech companies can add value on the practitioner's workflow. BestDoc, one of our companies, is trying to do that, and other companies, the ones that we segregated and spoke about, right? Digital therapeutics and wellness and so on, if they could all come together so that longitudinal data can be captured in a meaningful way. But for that to happen, we need NDHM again has come out rolling with National Health ID. So probably that will facilitate where all patient record data sits on. And push has to come from the government. I don't think private or the government sector is incentivized to collect the data, right? So it has to come from the government, and it's happening. It's happening right now. So we'll see how it moves the needle towards interoperability of data.
Got it. Cool. Maybe last question from my side, and then I have a few fun questions I'd love to hear. Maybe if both of you want to pitch in. So last question is for the entrepreneurs listening. They could be from healthcare space or outside. Any specific advice on as you look into the future of health here, in digital health in particular?
That's a fun question too. Why isn't it a fun question? This is a fun question indeed.
Sure.
Wow, plenty of things. Just in my humble opinion. The first is patient design. Any entrepreneur thinking about investing into developing in healthcare, if they don't embrace patient design, if they won't have patient advisory boards on the highest level of decision making in the company, I'm afraid they will fail, or they must be very lucky. The second thing is the line that we have been talking about, how digital health is making patients the point of care. So anything that I come up with, a product, a service, must be in line with that philosophy or thought. The third thing is that this cultural transformation that's going on. If someone understands why it's a cultural transformation, then they will simply come up with better products. Just one example about that. I saw a study when they gave virtual reality devices to patients staying at the hospital with the idea that by using VR and being in the ocean or flying around in the world, they would feel better. They could even measure quantifiably that their pain scores got reduced. But that wasn't the case. But what was different in a different setting was that they asked their physicians to act as coaches in this process. So the physician and the patient discussed the potential expectations and the side effects. And then the same devices with the same software worked. It led to reducement in their pain scores, and patients felt generally better. The only difference was involving their physician as a guiding member of the team in the process, not just giving technologies to patients. That's why it's a cultural transformation. Maybe a fourth thing is, I know how hard it can be to develop something in a specific country and learning about the regulations in healthcare in that country, but healthcare is going to be globalized. So the more global approach a company has, an entrepreneur has, the better chance they will have to spread that knowledge, that product, that service across borders globally. And maybe I stop here because I could go on.
It's a great list. That's a great list.
Thank
Radhika,
you.
anything to add?
Advice to founders.
Yeah.
I can't advise founders. They should advise us. I've not been an operator. Again, maybe if I had to say how they could look at healthcare problems, it will be good if they can start off with understanding the market and market sizing well, right? I mean, this is something I learned in Accel as well, bottoms up way of market sizing. Many of the times founders come saying this is a large demographic problem, but when you break it down, like for example, an example that I commonly quote, we have about 70 to 75 million diabetes patients in India, and the average spend per patient is about $100, which makes it a 7.5 billion market. However, when we look at the digital adoption, of course, digitally, we've all adopted to ordering food, and other lifestyle habits have moved digitally, but to manage care, especially in India, it's a very small percentage. And out of that, the digital apps are going to get a 10 or 20% take rate, right? So then it completely shrinks the market. So it would be good if they can think through which markets they want to really go after and think global. It's great to start your pilots here and then see and take it elsewhere. And the other one more heuristic that we learned from our founders, our companies in onco.com, is that we completely trivialized the importance of having a care manager, where the patients come in for a second opinion on onco.com platform, and then they continue to stay in the app, on the platform to manage their disease condition and, God forbid, until palliative care. So there, we didn't think the care manager's role is that important. It was more like a lead gen that we had used. And we see that that's driven the growth, the value of the care manager helping to what Dr. Bertalan said, because the patients are left in the dark and this is a life or death axis disease. So the care manager is able to provide a lot of information and handhold the patient through a very difficult journey. And so things like this are very important. Again, it brings value. It puts value at the center, right?
Can I add two more things
Please, on go for it.
What Radhika said? Thank you, Radhika, for these points. And you made me think about two other points. One is how healthcare works, and that's peer-reviewed medicine and evidence-based medicine, which means even if you, as a founder, you come up with the best technology in the world that will save millions of lives, if you can't prove its validity and scientific background in peer-reviewed studies in the way evidence-based medicine works, we in healthcare simply cannot use it because that's how the system works. And the second is, if as a founder, you don't genuinely want to help patients or physicians with your service or product, I think you will fail, because that's healthcare. That's different industry. That's very unique in many ways, and people's lives are at stake. You might make mistakes along the road, but if you genuinely want to help patients or physicians, then you will find ways to make it happen because they are waiting for your solutions to come to life.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. So maybe just a couple of fun questions to each of you. What are your top life or health hacks? Radhika, you want to go first?
No, I'll copy Dr. Bertalan. No, I'm just kidding. I'd like to say some fanciful things like testing my genome and having acai berry and, doing animal flow, but no, none of that. I've been trying to do intermittent fasting as regularly as possible. It works wonders. If you haven't tried, I recommend that. I try 14 hours. I can't go beyond that. I land up getting headaches. So intermittent fasting, IF is one, and then I'm trying to sleep better thanks to Accel. I've
not managed to achieve
So yeah,
food and sleep. That's good. Dr. Bertalan, to you. Yeah.
I have two life hacks I really love and bring benefit to my life. One is having zero notifications on my smartphone. So really no app can go through that. Only unless I get a phone call or a text message. That's the only thing I see, because I can't turn those things off. But there is no other notification on my phone. And I've been having the phone like that for 5 years now. It's like a peace of mind situation where I decide when I dive into doing those things, and not people push me to do things right now. And the second thing is my favorite life hack ever. I use an app and a website called focusatville.com. And what they do is they do EEG studies. So they have brain scans of people while they are listening to music, and they are trying to find those types of music that can help you focus in the best way. And I've been working with that music for, I think, since 2013 every day. So I think now I program myself to, immediately I start listening to that music, my brain just clicks and I can focus right away, because that's how I have been conditioning myself for the last couple of years. But that's I think the life hack I like the most.
I'm going to try that. Wow. Focus at will.
Focusatville.com.
Okay. I'll try that.
Cool. AD, you should try the other one too, the non-push notifications. At least one
that
day.
I'm already getting there. On the last question, maybe favorite gadgets or apps that really are specific to health that have helped you. Whoever wants to go first.
I'm happy to.
Sure.
About gadgets, it's easy, because I have a relationship with my fitness smartwatch. So we live with each other. We make decisions together. It's always on me, even by having a shower, by sleeping. So I think it's like an organ. It's part of my life, part of my human body. And that's okay. So we have a good relationship as a gadget. Regarding an app, I will surprise you, but that it would be a chess app. I play chess every day. And the way I think I use that app maybe the most often out of all the apps I have on my phone.
Which one is this?
I use chess.com for tactics, and I play only chess.com because I think the platform is better for playing, but tactics are more difficult on chess.com. So I do both.
Got it. Great.
That's my answer here.
Radhika?
I'm just excited about AirPods. I put it on calls and go do my yoga or workout at a distance. So I'm still excited about that. I'm a new
Radhika can
entrant.
teach us all yoga, so which is awesome. Yeah. On that note, I wish you both really good health, and for all the founders listening as well, this has been a really good look into the future of health. And there's a lot of work to be done. And for the founders listening, I hope there's a lot of great takeaways. Thank you so much, Radhika and Dr. Bertalan, for joining us.
Thank you for the great questions.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dr. Bertalan. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Edi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the chat with Dr. Bertalan and Radhika on the future of digital health. We touched upon some of the trends that our experts on the show have spotted over the years and how they can be transformed into ideas that could be the next big thing in digital health. We also discussed some tailwinds in the space that have surfaced due to COVID-19 and how the future of digital health universe will have the patient at the center of it. We hope you liked this podcast and got something new to learn from it. If you have some feedback for us, let us know on Twitter at Accel_India and visit us on SeedToScale.com/insights. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with your friends in the startup world. Stay tuned for more episodes from the Future of X series. Thank you and stay safe.